Happy Monday, everyone. Welcome. Good morning, Laura. How are you?
I'm good, Rhee. How are you today?
I'm good. For those of you who are watching, I was just telling Laura that I watched, and I think I just did it again. I
Oh,
watched our last coffee talk, and I said, "Hello, Laura," just like the Bostonian, and I'm not going to do that anymore. So it's Laura. Happy Monday.
happy Monday, Rhee. How are you doing? How was your weekend?
I had a great weekend. I went and did Carolina Dance Masters. I was an MC, got to work with sessions with the teachers, studio owners. And this man who's been working with teachers and studio owners for so long has started working with parents. And I have to tell you, it's one of the
Mhm.
most rewarding sessions that I get a chance to do.
Why
Who
do you say that?
would have
Why?
thunk? I think I get away with saying things that maybe teachers express, but they don't listen to them. I
Mm,
also make a point to remind them that especially competitive dancers, you're not buying awards. And then I say, you know how your child can walk up to somebody and carry on a conversation and you don't know where that come from? You bought that.
mm-hmm.
You know how
Yep.
your child will do in a college interview? You bought that. And you
Yep.
see light bulbs go off. I don't know that it's anyone's fault. I just
Mm-hmm.
think that we focus too much on, let's say, the accolade side of it for our kids and not so much about, like, even spending the weekend
Yeah.
with your kids. You are making memories, but I bet everybody's stressed out about if your kid's going to win. Are you noticing
Right.
the laughs? Are you noticing these things?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you get lots of hugs when it's over and thank yous. And I think to myself, okay, made an impact in a place that's different. Like maybe they'll go back and be the best mom in the lobby.
Right, right. And I want to say, as a studio owner, like, we appreciate that for sure. Because when you said it that way, hearing it from a different person, it's like I think about it when my dancers hear my same notes and corrections from the judges. Now all of
Hmm.
a sudden they're like hearing it from someone else who isn't Miss Laura, and now they're starting to apply it or get it, right? Like that's where my mind went. I'm like, oh, my students do that with the judges, or we're from, or when we take class, like we went to New York this weekend, and when they're getting notes from the teachers in the class, or they're using other words to describe movement, I can see their little, like, light bulbs going off in their head, figuring it out. I'm like, that's what it reminded me of. It's like we can always learn. You can teach an old dog new tricks. We're always learning.
Yes. Yes. And I think parents want to know more, but
Yeah.
maybe are a little afraid to ask, maybe don't want to
Mhm.
sound like they're questioning something. So their
Mhm.
opportunity to understand and to be able to communicate and ask that question that they've always wondered about
Right.
enlightens everybody in the room because they've all wondered about that.
Right. Yeah. And I think that says a lot too about us studio owners. It's like we need to be open when they come to us with a question. I think I was a little more, I don't want to standoffish, but maybe a little bit more nervous when a parent would come up to me year one, two, three, four, five, and question why I do something the way I do it, or question a rule or a procedure or whatever. And now I tell my staff this too. I'm like, no, they just don't know. They don't know why we all need matching tights. They just don't know why all of our hair needs to be the same way when we go on stage. They just don't know, right? And I just tell them, like, you when you go play soccer, you need shin pads. When you go play soccer,
Yes.
you need cleats. It's the same thing in the dance world. When you go out on that stage, you need to be professionally prepared. When you go out on the soccer field, there's certain things that you need to be prepared with. It's the same thing, but let me show you the list and why we do it. And I think once I look at it that way, not that I was getting defensive. I don't think defensive is the right word, but that's the only word that's kind of coming to mind. But maybe we can be less defensive in that way when they question something, or maybe just inquire about why something's done a certain way.
Yes, yes, yes. And I say for the studio owners or teachers who maybe stress out a little bit when that's happening, think to yourself how you might be if your own child was in an activity that you did not understand.
Yeah.
And treat that parent like you would want to be treated. And I look at it like this too. The mom says, when can she move up to this level or whatever? You've answered that question 900 times. So you should have an answer down that's going to make them feel good about their child and the future. Like, it's not say to yourself, oh, good, she asked me one I have a good answer for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I've answered it so many times. You're a professional. Oh, we got a little deep and heavy into that one. I think parents can be our biggest allies if we do it right. Yeah. And in the old days, I would say to teachers or studio owners when we start something, I'd say, what do you find to be the hardest thing about our field? And they'd all raise their hands and say parents. And they'd all say it in agreement with each other. I thought I agreed through the years. Now I look at it and I go, what's the communication like?
Right.
Doesn't mean there aren't people that are difficult to deal with. You are dealing with people's most precious possession. Yeah. Yeah. But the answers are really easy if we don't take offense to them. And I think 99% of people don't mean it offensive.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think they're coming from a place where they don't know, like you said, about the dance world. Most people didn't necessarily dance growing up, or our competitive field right now is at such a high level that even if they did dance growing up, maybe they never competed. Maybe they didn't, right? So this is a totally different world that these families are walking into, a world that you can go so many different ways with of what is appropriate, what's not appropriate, right? There's all these different avenues in this competitive dance world. So I think it's important that you as a dance studio owner, you are very clear with your expectations and what you're going to be offering with your program. And we do that. We have a beginning of the year meeting with our parents, and actually have your handbook, and I tweaked it and put my own flavor onto it. And I sit down with all 65 of my parents over Zoom every single year, second Wednesday of September, and I read it. And I say, you have any questions, ask them now. What are your questions? And it's a very open conversation. Why are there levels? Why is and I don't get mad answering questions. I want you to understand why we're in certain levels, why and how the competitions level out these dancers, and why I feel comfortable when a kid should get pushed or know that they're still intermediate right now. I think it helps with the studio camaraderie, right? And the community. If there's that open line of communication with your parents and with your teachers too, and the teachers to the parents as well. All of us are all on the same page.
Okay, Laura, we have special guests today. We got a little carried away there, but I hope that message was good, whether you're watching live or on demand. Let's try to make the parents the ally. Just start figuring out how to open up that line of communication and make it better and better. Okay, we have special guests, Kristian and Bryce. I'll call them marketing specialists, but they sure know a lot about our fields. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of things, and we'll be back with you right after this. Here we go. Come join us this summer, Dance Life Teacher Conference. Hello, you guys.
Hey.
Welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Excited to be here.
I'm going to start off asking you guys to share with us how'd you land into the dance niche from wherever you come from? How's that? I'll start with you, Bryce, because you laughed, so I think it's going to be interesting. Let's hear it.
Well, I laugh because it is an interesting story, and there's a very, very long version, and then there's a shorter version, which we'll go with for today. But the short version is Kristian and I were friends or becoming friends, and we were both digital marketers, specifically in the kind of commercial film space. So we made videos for big companies, small companies, etc. And during the pandemic, or shortly after the pandemic, we were starting to look for ways to collaborate and figure out what's next, because obviously film production completely dried up during a global lockdown. And Kristian had an opportunity to work with a dance studio, and we were connecting one day. I said, well, what are you working on? He said, oh, I just finished a project with a dance studio. And I remember thinking to myself, and I may have even said, like, that's so random. Like, okay, like whatever, it's paying the bills, I guess. And he said, he's like, yeah, well, after the other one. I said, wait, two? You've done this twice now with two dance studios? And he said, yeah. I said, and you did the same thing to solve the same problem? He said, yeah. I said, I don't know, man. I think you're onto something. And so it didn't take very long. 90 days after that, we were like, well, what if we try something? What if we see if we can build something here that's meaningful and that works? And within 90 days, we had absolutely fallen in love with the industry, with studio owners, most passionate group of people we'd ever met. And that was almost 4 years ago. And now it's just, how do we continue to level up and super serve dance studio owners and help them win?
Wow, I love that. How about you, Kristian? You got anything to add to that, or is it a ditto?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was the pandemic what showed us that we had to really reinvent ourselves, and it was just a big, dark, unknown road of what that reinvention is going to look like on the other side of things. And yeah, the couple of dance studio owners that I worked with on the other side of the pandemic, it was just for me a way to film in person again. And that was like, oh man, I'm excited. I'm getting out in the field again, doing some stories. And I think that was kind of like the first sign of seeing, like, you know, these are really passionate people that have something really special, but they also are challenged with sharing it with their community and like becoming known, because it just changed a lot. And before they could rely on their referrals and word of mouth, but now more people were doing more research online. And so there was just like a big gap where there was something so special that wasn't reaching the right people. And so I was like, okay, I just wanted to roll up my sleeves and started applying everything that we learned with digital marketing. And slowly but surely, we started realizing that there's a need for it. And like Bryce said, within 90 days, we started connecting with other owners and just fell in love with the owners before we fell in love with the industry as a whole. And so we just kind of rode that passion and the connection it really just started with something like this. We started hosting our own virtual conversation. Let's just talk about the business, the industry, and that's how we began building relationships and finding ways to help them.
Well, I've seen you guys in action. I feel like you bring a lot to the community, and you have grown to understand our world more quickly than some of us understand it.
It's true.
So, tell me a little bit about when you look at us as a field. Tell me a little bit about what you think when it comes to a marketing perspective. What you think are the most important things that we may not be thinking about?
I think my answer, I'm going to lead in with the conversation you two were having right before we joined in bridging the gap of how do you help parents understand what the value is. And, you know, how do you step away from the focus of the awards, the competition teams, and really like look and understand, what do parents need today? Like, you think about all these dancers that are in their teens, they're like, you know, really exceptional. They're doing all your intensives. Like they're the ones that are putting in the work. They're the ones that are really looking to take this passion into potential career paths. But when we trace it back to the origin story of that kid, it usually ends up back to like they started dancing when they were 3 or 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So if you trace that journey back, I think as in this industry, it's kind of, I think we all need to do this. We need to get out of our own bubble and have research and focus groups on like, what do parents with preschool age children, like, what are they looking for today? How do they make decisions on, you know, their child's, what's important in their early formative years for children? I think it's really focusing on that journey of the parent. So this is all fresh because I had a Friendsgiving with some friends over the weekend, and I met someone who is in a boutique agency, and she's working with brands like Patagonia and recently started a brand with Huggies, so the diaper company. And so they were like, this Huggies, for example, they've been promoting and advertising to parents with kids who are 1 and 2 or whatever, right? But they're realizing we need to start getting to, how do we get people to think about Huggies before they need Huggies? And so her project is to work with Huggies to start marketing to people who are between the ages of like in their early 20s, before they're even parents. Like they're going to be, they're thinking about, how do we get in front of this audience so by the time they're a parent, Huggies is the answer. So like with your dance studios, how do you get in front of parents so by the time they're 3 or 4, dance is the answer to building those life skills in those formative years. So
I just want to say I really like that. That was a good perspective.
And it's interesting too, because I never even I will say take that perspective at my studio. I used to only start at 2.5, but I used to have parents come to me and say, "Oh, but I have a 10-month-old, I have a 12-month-old, I have a 15-month-old." And I used to say early on, I take them when they're 2.5. I take them when they're 2.5. I take them when they're 2.5. And I said to myself, this is the stupidest thing. I'm literally turning people away. Why do I take them at 2.5 when I have moms who are coming to me saying, I want to put my kid in dance class? So I started a dancing diapers program at the studio, and it's only a 6-week program, and it's a mommy and me, or a dad and me, whatever. It's someone special and they're little. And it feeds in though. I strategically do it every 6 weeks. And literally it's like once or 2.5, they're like, what's next? I'm like, go into creative. And they're just automatically just wrapped into my studio. But now you have me thinking, I'm like, but I only get them when they're 14, 15 months old. How do I even get them, like you're saying, even before that? Like, how is Libra Dance Studio already in their head even before, like maybe when they're pregnant or before they even have kids, right? Like I don't think of it that way. So I think I need to open my mind maybe a little bit more, because that's not, I never even thought of it that way. I just thought of it, how can I get them even sooner? But I never thought even before that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I have a joke, but I don't know if it's appropriate, but here it goes, like fetal marketing.
Is what marketing?
Fetal
Marketing. Okay, I'm glad you laughed. It just passed through my mind.
I mean, to be honest with you, it's not necessarily about like how do you get them younger. It is about communicating the benefits of what you do to the right people at the right time. And that's really going to be it. Now, there is definitely data that suggests the younger you get a dancer, the more valuable they are to you. The LTV, lifetime value of that dancer, goes way up. And just to put that in perspective, national average for tuition for one dancer taking one class is like $62.50 nationally here in the US. A lot of studio owners think about that number and they're like, oh, well, it doesn't matter if I gain one or lose one because it's like, $62. It's not a big deal. But the truth is that if you get a 3-year-old and you keep them for 12 years, that can be $20, $40, $70,000 in revenue to your business. And so it really does make a big difference. And so again, it's not necessarily like, how do I get parents that are expecting to be thinking about dance? Because Huggies, let's be honest, has deeper pockets and can afford to spend more on campaigns that don't return an immediate dollar amount versus your average dance studio that needs to see an immediate return on dollars spent. And so it's about using that money strategically, but there definitely is a component of how do you get the right benefits in front of those parents when they're at that stage. So I think, Laura, that was a great one. If you've got parents showing up with 10-month-olds saying, oh, I have 10-month-olds. Well, suddenly I have a 10-month-old program. Absolutely. Come on. How's Monday work?
Exactly.
Because the market is telling you what it wants, and just follow the market's lead.
Okay, I have a question for you guys, because obviously in listening, how do you convince that studio owner, or is it hard to convince that studio owner who previously to meeting you guys thought it was about winning? Or promoting the awards, or promoting, like, what do you say to those people? Because I often work with them. I'm curious your perspective.
Well, so this was actually going to be when you ask the question, what do we see generally? What do you need to know about marketing generally, in the industry on the whole? And I think it all begins with mindset, really. Like, what is your perspective on marketing? What is your goal for your studio? And that's going to change an incredible amount about how well, truthfully, advertising and marketing works for you. There's a lot of studios right now that are reaching out. They want to do marketing because they've been to the conferences, they've listened to the speakers, they've been on the webinars, they've listened to us, and we're saying you need to be advertising because your competitor is, and they're getting into it because they feel like they need to, whereas they don't really want to. They're happy with the 200 dancers that they have. They don't want more kids. They like their schedule, they like their workload, they like their cadence. And so it doesn't necessarily work for them. You've got other studios that are absolutely hell-bent on winning all the competitions and getting all the trophies and the awards. And the truth is, you don't want new dancers if that's your goal, because new dancers are going to take your time and effort away from the elite dancers that you already are working with. And so there becomes this tension where I don't want new kids coming in. I want to work with the great kids I already have. Then you have this third group, and this is where you might say they're dancepreneurs, right? They're showing up going, I love dance, I want to build a business. And these are the ones that, generally speaking, find ways to take kids all year round. They find ways to get kids into recitals. They work around costume restrictions when, we get into the spring and a kid wants to be in the recital. Yeah. And they're the ones that end up with 400, 600, 900 kids in their program. And suddenly everybody shows up and goes, where'd they come from? And it just was a mindset shift. They weren't focused on winning the awards. They were focused on building a business. And I'm not passing judgment on any of those. Not saying that one is better than the other.
Right.
It's really just, what is it that you're trying to build in your life and in your studio?
I love the way you said that. And I can say, honestly, I'm the third. I think early on, maybe I was 2 for a little while, that liked working with the highest competitive kids and all of that. And then I think I really just, by year 5, year 6, I was just like, we're going to focus on my rec program for a minute. And I have almost 300 kids at this point, and I have 62 on team. They're a third of my studio, a quarter of my studio. And I love them. And they have their own competitive director who takes care of all their emails and takes care of the program, with a pair of white gloves, and they're taken care of. But when I advertise for babies. I don't want studio hoppers. I don't want kids who are coming from other competitive programs. I always market for babies, always. I want those 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, because like you're saying, if you get them when they're 3 and you keep them for 10 years, I would love to have them until they're 13, 14, 15. Even if that means they don't want to go all the way and graduate with me, I still had a customer for 10 years. I'm proud of that. You know, like that's my goal. I mean, I would love for them to stay with me forever, but I also know that they might follow other passions. Then I get that too. Or want to go to maybe a more competitive program or whatever, right? Everyone has their own flavor of what they want in a dance studio. But yeah, I think, and I think that says a lot that to the studio owners who are listening, that you can change as you grow as a studio owner. What you first wanted might not be what you want. You're, season 14.
Or need.
It might be very different. Right. Or need, right. Because you can be very smart with your competitive program and it can make you a lot of money, or it could bleed you dry. And your recreational program can be supportive of your, your competitive program if you're not doing it the right way. So I think that change is important. I think it's changed a lot for me and especially now that I have a son. It's like, I look at programs very differently being a studio owner. When he was in a soccer program, just the first soccer program was 6 weeks long. When I tell you, they did not teach him not one thing. They threw the balls on the field and they let the kids run around. And I was like, this is interesting. And I didn't know, going back to the parents, I'm like, I don't play soccer. I'm like, is this what soccer's like? I'm like, should they be doing drills? And then we switched and I took him to a different program now. And like, in the first 10 minutes, I was like, oh, this is soccer. Oh, like, I didn't know. Like, that's not my world. I'm in the dance world. So that was very, very interesting to me. You don't know until you know, right? So,
yeah.
I want to take you guys somewhere because I know you're smart in this area because I've watched you speak. Talk to me about retention.
Yeah, we all went. All three of us.
I think your philosophies and understanding of it is important, and I think that even if people aren't associated with either of our companies, they should know what you know.
So I'll jump in first. So I think Laura, like your story about the soccer thing kind of inspires the direction I'm going to take it. And so I did a West Coast tour a few months ago just to visit a lot of our clients and just to see the shapes and sizes of our client base. And one particular one out in Orange County, Julie, she has like I don't even call it a dance studio. It's like a dance enterprise. Like she has a campus with a barista in like 10 rooms. Like it's a thing. And so I was hanging out, doing some video work for her and hanging out in the parent lobby. And there's, the chit chat and the parents hanging out with their coffees and talking about their kids in the day. And I learned later in the day that this was it was a Friday. It was on Fridays, only their competition dancers are there. So these are parents. Someone made a comment, one of the dads, it was like, oh, this is why we spend $40K a year on dance. And I was like, wait, excuse me? What was that? So I like pulled him aside and I'm like, wait, you really spending $40,000 a year on dance? And he has 2 daughters. She's like 8 and 6. And that includes the tuition, the travel, everything, right? All in. I'm like, $40,000 one parent on dance. And I just kind of straight up asked him.
Rhee almost spit out his coffee when you said the ages, that they were only 6 and 8 because he was thinking high school.
I thought you were going to say that they were intensive dancers. They were 16, 17, 18. Sorry.
8 years old and 6, right?
Wow.
So, and I'm like, so why do you pay that? I just straight up, and he said, because I see them grow. That was his answer. And Laura, like to your point of, you can take a kid to a soccer camp, and if they're just ping-ponging the ball around with no real discipline, a kid may not grow in that environment. But when you go to somewhere where they do drills and they care about it, he's like, I keep paying because they're growing. And I think that's on one level, sure, the quality of instruction in the dance technique, but I think also growing as an individual and thinking of a teacher, not as a teacher, but as like a coach in life, almost in a way.
Yeah.
Where
mentor.
Yeah, you're a mentor, and you're someone who's a part of that kid's life, whether they're dancing with you or not. I think is where, in my opinion, like retention is. That's when I think of retention. That's kind of what I think about.
What do you guys feel about the studio staff and the teachers knowing about retention? Do you guys feel that is important? Do you feel
Absolutely.
in your okay
Yes.
and like bonusing them or not bonusing them? Can we talk about that? What have you seen that has been successful?
Well, how like the practical of how you do it, we've seen a lot of different things. It's not an area that we actively focus on in the business, but of course in our business, but of course we hear what other people are doing. We have heard of folks who bonus individual teachers based on retention or re-enrollments, or even moving from a kid from one class to taking now 2 classes a week. Like we've heard of that. We've heard of team goals where the studio owner will show up and say, listen, our goal is to retain X percentage. And if we do, then I'm taking everybody on a 3-day spa trip in the Adirondacks or like whatever. Like there's lots of hows in terms of how to, kind of motivate that and instill that. What I just want listeners to hear today is you absolutely need to be talking to your teachers about retention. You need to be looking at the numbers per teacher, per class to look at what does retention look like, because you may have a teacher who's going through something in their personal life and it's translating into the classroom experience. And suddenly, normally you might have a 5%, attrition rate, and suddenly you have a 20% attrition rate. You need to know that. You need to know what's going on in that classroom. You may have a teacher in the wrong room, meaning they're a phenomenal teacher with the 11, 12, 13-year-olds, but they get 0 retention in the 5 and 6-year-olds because they don't have the right personality to teach those littles. And so regardless of how you choose to do it, because again, this is not our area of expertise. We at Dance Motion Marketing, you want more dancers, we'll help you get them. Like that's what we do. From the ads, the attraction, the follow through, the sales process, we can help with that. Retention, you've got to be looking at though. You have to know what that looks like. And the more granular you can get, and this is true of everything in your studio business, the more granular you can get, the more data you will uncover, the smarter decisions you can make. And so that's, I think, sort of how we think about retention ourselves, because it's important.
And I feel like when, at least at my studio, I really try to emphasize that we're a team. Yes, I'm the captain of the ship, but like we all make the ship move forward through this ocean, right? So for me, I like making my teachers aware of retention, and they do know if someone dropped, and they now come to me, why did this one drop? Like even before I can get to them and say, hey, like, oh, her soccer schedule didn't work. And like I had teachers say to me too, but I have the same class on Thursday. Like they're already problem solving a little bit for me. Like, can she come on Thursday? I know that I have space available on my Thursday combo class. Can she come to that one instead if you called? And I'm like, oh, 5 years ago, I never had that because I didn't push retention. I didn't make them aware that like, this is our business number. This is the number we would like to reach as a studio. Like you're saying, Bryce, like all of that's important. I think maybe some studio owners are a little scared maybe to share too much information about the business. And it's like, no, but at least how I feel about it is like, we're all a team, right? Yes, I'm the captain of the ship. However, we're all making the ship move forward. So I need you all to understand the components in order for us to continue to move forward. It just makes it easier. Maybe they feel that urgency like I do, that when we have a week where a couple kids drop, long term, that number's big. It can be big, that loss. Then they don't, I don't think they understood it until I explained that to them. I think as studio owners, that's something everyone should be doing. Yeah.
And it's not just studio owners. I think it's all of us as we evolve into becoming a leader. I think, as our own team grew, I find myself like, I'm like closely guarded to like these core business numbers. If I share them, but if you share it, you got to make it known. This is important to the company. You are part of the company. Almost like make retention your team's problem, because then they have an opportunity to help you solve the problem. And they might think about it in ways that you don't think about it too. And like you mentioned, Laura, like they're going to come to you like, hey, someone dropped, I want to find out why. And all of a sudden it's like, cool, go for it. And everyone gets involved too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, business is a team sport. And I think the other reason why, truthfully, studio owners don't share these numbers with their staff is because they just don't know them themselves, or they don't feel confident in understanding what they mean. So there is this very real component. We talk about this extensively with our studios that we work with weekly. And know your numbers. You need to know. And it was interesting because the more we started saying you have to know your numbers, the more our client showed up and said, you need to help me understand my numbers better. And so this is a very real position that we're taking at Dance Motion Marketing over the last quarter. We've spent a lot of time and money investing in data research systems that allow us to really granularly understand what's happening in the industry. And I mean, Rhee, you said it well. We've learned this industry quickly, and it was anecdotal to this point. Now we have data sets, thousands upon thousands of data sets that are allowing us to really mine down to understand what's happening in the industry and allow our clients to understand what's happening in their businesses. But a lot of these studios, if you don't have somebody who's coming alongside you, you may have a bookkeeper who sends you a monthly report and says, here's how much you made, here's how much you spent. But what's that mean? We lost 3 kids and we, added 2 more. But what's that mean? Like, if you're not contextualizing these numbers, they mean nothing at all. And so we spend a tremendous amount of time with our studios, helping them to understand their numbers and what it means for them so that they can start, engaging their team. Hey, you have a retention issue. Hey, the market's shifting in your area. Hey, there's somebody new who's advertising. We need to take a different approach to help your ads stand out. Hey, you ran a free trial and you've done it for 33 years, but it's not working anymore. Let's figure out why.
Switch it up.
And these are the things that you need to be thinking about as a studio owner. But again, it's a lot because this isn't the only thing that your average studio owner is doing. They're spinning a dozen other plates. And so it becomes, unfortunately, that thing that just falls to the back burner.
Yeah. And I think I do want to say too, a lot of us, I don't want to speak for all studio owners, but I feel like I can say this. We got into this because we had a passion for dance. And I think you both started off by saying like how passionate studio owners are. But I feel like sometimes as studio owners, what we do is we miss the mark when it comes to the business side of it. Like we're very strong with the passion and the teaching and the choreography and the dancing and the scheduling and blah, 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 blah. But when it comes to the things like you're talking about, the marketing and the numbers and the knowing your numbers and the retention and what that means and communicating that to your staff, like that business hat to put on, it's sometimes scary, right? Sure. It's scary and it's hard and it's probably like a pool you don't always want to like swim in, right? You don't want to go on that deep end of because it is scary as a studio owner. Especially coming out of the pandemic and people still recovering from that and growing their numbers back to where they were before. It is scary, but I feel like as studio owners, the more, at least is what I found. I'm a Gold Alliance member with Rhee. And once I got into that program and I truly understood my business and where I wanted it to go and where I wanted to push forward, but I didn't know where I wanted to go because I really didn't know where it was. Does that make sense?
Totally.
I didn't know. I really didn't know, like how you're saying, know your numbers. I know what my number is right now. I know what my unit number is. I know what my, like those numbers are always in my head. I'm consistently looking at them every single day. But I still think there's some studio owners where it's scary for them to look at those numbers. And I think if there's some of them who are listening today, getting involved in programs and putting people to maybe delegate some things to is what we should be thinking about doing. Like we are business owners, right? I think it's maybe we just forget to have that business owner hat on as much as maybe we should because it's more fun and easier to go teach that dance class. It is. I would rather be teaching my Monday night senior jazz than running my books, right? Like totally. It's true, but we need to be able to do both if we want to have longevity in this field.
Well, but that goes back to what do you want? So I talked to a studio owner In my role at Dance Exposure Marketing, I probably talk to 400 different studio owners every single year. Lots of volume, talk to a just tremendous number of people. And I talked with one studio owner last week. And I said, what's going on? Why did you want to talk to me? What's going on? This is a studio we did not work with. And she said, I've been in business for almost 30 years. It was like 27 years, something like that. Long time, legacy studio at this point, right? And I said, okay, what's the problem? She said, it's just not working anymore. I'm not getting new kids. And so we kind of stripped away the layers and drilled down. And what we uncovered was that there was another studio in town that had opened at some point in the last 10 years that had just massively outgrown her. And so her studio used to be 300, 400 students. Now she was down to like 120. And this other studio that was almost an hour away in a completely different county, kids were driving from her backyard an hour away to take classes at this other studio. And she was devastated by this. She's like, I don't understand what I'm doing. And we kind of got into it. And I said, well, talk to me about your program. And she said, oh, all my teachers are credentialed. They all have, we teach technique. We teach it really well. We do, everybody's got like a master's in dance and this and that. And she ran down the list of their credentials, why they were the best. And it was all in studio stuff. And then we went and looked at the other studio. And she's like, that program is crap. It's not a good program. They don't even teach correct technique. Well, that's true, or maybe true. But when we went online, they had built a marketing machine. They were brilliant at reaching out to kids. And you got to remember that your average parent, and I am one, like my daughter dances, when you start talking to me about technique, my eyes glaze over and you lose me. I don't even know what you're talking about. You're like, oh, so-and-so was trained at the Royal Ballet in London, and so-and-so was part of this association. And I'm like, I don't know what those associations mean. Is the Royal Ballet of London good? I don't know, because I'm a know-nothing parent. But if I see advertising that looks really sharp, in a funnel that is easy to navigate, in a website that is clean and tight, I know what to click on. And I will. And that honestly goes back to, again, what is it that you're trying to do? Do you want to be the most elite, most prestigious, best accredited school in your area? Go for it. Understand that there's trade-offs associated with that. Or do you want to build a marketing machine that just attracts everybody through your front door and you can vacuum up the kids' population in your area? You can do that too. Or you can find some middle road that allows you to do both, that satisfies your personal, creative, artistic values and provides you a great life. It's just about, though, bottom line, being clear on what it is that you're trying to build in your business, and then surrounding yourself with the people and resources that will allow you to do so. Because not everybody wants 800 kids.
Right. But I feel like also that's great to hear that studio owner is working with you guys, because obviously she has a solid program, but she's lacking that avenue of what you're saying is that marketing, right? If we're able to market to these parents and children in a way that we are getting them into the door, then you can educate them as far as the technique and you'll have that opportunity later on as they grow into your studio. But I mean, she obviously needs you guys to get them back into her building, because like you're saying, the other people just are marketing geniuses, and you need that. Every studio right now needs that.
The catch, because I know the studio that Bryce just talked about, the catch is you being willing to let the ego go and start doing what's going to attract the business. Because sometimes when we try to be the most elite or we claim to have the best teachers, it's ego that has driven us to that place, rather than I'm a really smart business person and I figured out that this school that I know is not as strong as I am is rolling in the customers, and that I can visually see why they're doing it. And it has nothing to do with my ego. In America, The last thing a parent asks are what your credentials are. Now, whether you like that or not is a different question and could be a coffee talk. But they want to know what date, time, how much.
Right.
Am I right on this, Bryce and Kristian?
Yeah, it's like what's it? The parents also have ego, and they are asking what's in it for me, and you gotta meet them where that is too.
Okay, because you guys are experts, and I can't let this go. Whether it's posting just to build a brand or marketing right now on social media, what do you think are the best avenues for a studio owner?
I mean, right now, Instagram and Facebook are primarily the platforms that I think is just the most matured in terms of paid advertising. So I can speak on there. Meta advertising is still probably the most matured. And I think we're starting to see, technology is changing, parents are changing. And the next area I would look at is maybe kind of, your website may not be a channel, but it is an important, not necessarily a way to get in front of more people, but it is an important channel that people get to you. So that would be the next level of importance. And then from there, I hear a lot of, talk about Google advertising. That is really, you got to research that and get an audit before you ever consider anything like that, because that is dependent on how often is someone searching for dance in your area. And so in some areas, it makes sense because you can see, hey, we have 200 searches a month, but in other areas, 5. So it's not worth paying for that kind of a place. And then finally, I think it's just having wholesome content. I think what we're talking about is making sure that what you create is you're considering the parents of these early youth age group rather than just having an Instagram full of your competitions. Because parents, when they look at you and they say, if you advertise your preschool program and then they look at your Instagram and it's all these kids doing things that are 10 years beyond the skill level of their 4-year-old, they're going to be like, this seems a little too intimidating. So it's all got to be kind of cohesive and just make sure that the marketing you're putting out there is all positioned to attract the kind of parents that you want to bring into your studio, right? So like, if you are trying to attract that elite level, then it should show that everywhere. But if you are trying to bring in more of those youth programs, everywhere you're online should be positioned for that parent.
Thank you. How about you, Bryce?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question that you're asking is a good one, and it's one that we're asked often, which is like, what is the one thing that I need to do to ensure that my business grows? Do I need to post on Instagram 5 days a week? Do I need paid ads? Like, what's the one thing that if I do, it's going to make my business work better? And
I didn't mean to ask you that question.
No, I'm phrasing it differently, but we are asked that question often.
Got it.
Often enough.
Yeah.
And the short version is yes. It's not about doing, one thing. It's about building a marketing system that works for you. So we have met studio owners that exclusively post organic content on Instagram multiple times a day, and their businesses grow. That's a decision. They've made that decision. We have other people who have just these awful websites, and they go in and they, get new websites and they reformat it and they really streamline it and they start getting more leads. Others will go with the paid ads route. And the truth is that they all touch on one another. If you've got great advertising, and then I click on it and I see on your socials that you have really clear, wholesome content, and it's fresh and it's alive, and then I go to your website and it's clean and easy to navigate, well, I'm far more likely to sign up and enroll than if you have an amazing ad and then I go to your website and I can't figure out what I'm supposed to click on. Right. And so it all sort of works together. And that's not the answer that anybody wants, by the way, because everybody wants to know, like, what's the magic bullet, the one thing. And it just doesn't work like that. The more you can do in all of these spheres, the more successful you will be over time.
So would you say overall that the answer is a consistent brand and knowing what it is you want to accomplish with that brand?
The principle, I think, stands. I think it really does have legs. It all has to be cohesive. You know, one of our peers and friends out in Australia, Rebecca, she's like such a savvy businesswoman, and she knows she's got great competition. She knows she has all this in her program. And like Rhee, I think she's a perfect example of someone that doesn't have ego in her business, because everywhere you see, it's all preschool. Like if you were to just look at it, you would think, oh, this is only a preschool focused dance studio. That's the only kids. But then you walk in, you realize, wow, they got, you know, acting classes for teens. They like their kids are developing careers and ending up on music videos. All that is part of a school, but her online presence, you would think of it is like a preschool dance place, but she knows that's her feeder to everything else that happens in her business. So I think the cohesiveness is, I think that principle does have legs if we kind of take that view rather than like what marketing tactics is the thing.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Give us some final words of wisdom, either coming from marketing or studio ownership, what you know about us and have observed. Kristian, I'll start with you.
Good thing. Thank you.
I think so. I would say create family relationships in this industry. I think the one thing that has always amazed me of this industry is the studio owners and the friendships that are developed, where they'll take a call from a friend at like 1 a.m. to help them through whatever it is they're going through. And so lean in and find your tribe. And because it is, I think having people that you can lean on makes the world of a difference in the journey of building a business, and feeling understood. I think I know I can speak for myself, and if I don't have any marketing agency owner friends, then I'm feeling lost most of the time and being like, I don't know how to fix, and am I the only one that's dealing with these problems? But if you can like meet and build your own little tribe, get validated, get support, I think that ultimately will help you through any challenge.
Thanks. Okay, Bryce, you had some time to think about it.
I did. My answer's not better because I had more time. I actually would. It's not so much advice; it's more an encouragement. I think mindset shift. We've talked quite a bit about that because thoughts are things, and they become. They dictate our actions, which dictate our outcomes. And I think one of the pervading and prevailing thoughts that we see across the industry is one of lack, that there's not enough kids, that I have to compete with the studio down the street from me. And I just want to encourage listeners today in the industry that there are kids being born every minute. There's plenty to go around, more than you could put in your studio, in your program, and really recognize that your only competitor is obscurity. It's just that people don't know about you. And if you focus on just doing that, not what, that studio down the way, not the one that copies everything you do, like just focus on getting the word out, getting more kids into dance. Because if you're in dance, it's important. It's changed your life. That's why you're here. And just focus on doing more of that and getting the message out to more dancers. A rising tide lifts all ships. And that's the change that I'd like to see it come to the industry, that we can be friends and you can be friends with the studio down the block, and you can even share ideas, because what works for you is better for all of you. And I think that's a hard thing to recognize. Just so you know, we eat our own dog food. We've actually gone out of our way to build relationships with our direct competitors in the space, because we think it's important that we're here to serve studio owners. And it doesn't matter if you're working with Dance Motion Marketing or if you're working with somebody else. you need to be working on your business. So I think that would just be my one parting phrase or thought, that just get the word out. And it's not about beating the studio down the block. It's just about getting more kids through the front door.
Ooh, okay. I'm not going to call that better than Kristian's, but Bryce, you need a little more confidence in yourself. That was
good.
Actually, I got that idea from Kristian, so you can thank him for it.
Okay, I thank you both actually for being with us. I respect you guys a whole lot. Wish you always the best. I've seen you in action. I know that you're the real deal. Tell people how to find out more about what you do, my friends.
Yep. So easiest way. Obviously we're on all the socials. We're on, Facebook. You can Google that. You can go to YouTube. We have a channel there where we post things. We have a podcast on Spotify. If you want to listen in on a weekly basis, we're sharing what we're learning, what we're seeing in near real time. It's called Dance Studio Advertising. But if you want to connect, best way to do it is just through our website, just dancemotionmarketing.com. Feel free to reach out. We make this offer every time we talk. Just reach out. We're not going to try to twist your arm. We're not going to try to sell you anything. You actually have to, and this is true, you actually have to beg to buy from us. You cannot buy from us. We're not going to hurt you. So just come on out, build a relationship with us. We'll tell you what we know. We'll help you, do well. If it's a great fit, maybe we'll work together. And if it's not, we'll send you on your way more equipped and more empowered to do well.
Great way to end the broadcast. Thank you, Laura and guests.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to see you both today.
We will see you in 2 weeks.